Hello and welcome to the channel, and I am here for a ranking video for you guys. Now, for this ranking, we're going to go ahead and rank the albums from the band Deftones. I think Deftones is a really great band. I'm actually kind of a newer fan of Deftones. I got into them sometime in 2020, but yeah, this band has never released a bad album, and yeah, so this ranking might be rather tough since there is no weak album from this band. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind here. We're not going to be including remixed albums, live material, or compilations, or anything like that, alright? Just the main studio records. Also keep in mind that I have all Deftones albums except for one. You'll see which one that is when we get to it. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this ranking. We're going to go from worst to best. Let's rank them all, the Deftones albums. So let's go ahead and begin with what I have as the weakest, and the weakest in my opinion is the self-titled album Deftones. Might get some looks for putting this album as their weakest, but to me this album just doesn't have the strongest replay value. Not a lot of memorable songs on here, and it's just overall the album that I return to the least from this band. Not sure what other people will think of that, but that's just me personally. I mean, this album doesn't have as strong replay value as their other albums, but this is still a very good album. All right, like I said, no bad Deftones album. But with this album, you got some really good songs on here like Minerva and Battle Axe, just to name a couple. But yeah, definitely a really good album. Not one of their best in my opinion, but I do think it's pretty good though. So the self-titled album Deftones. Now, next in the ranking is actually the only Deftones album I don't have in my collection yet. I would like to, at some point, get this album for my collection, but for some odd reason, this album is not that easy to come across in stores. I mean, I've tried places like FYE, exchange stores, CD warehouses. I mean, this album is a real struggle to find, I guess, but of course, if I ever see it anywhere, I'll go ahead and get it. But the album that's up next is Saturday Night Wrist. This album is definitely a bit different, kind of unique in their discography. It's got some highlights, but it also has some songs that are kind of average, I suppose. But some highlights would be Hole in the Earth and Rats, Rats, Rats. Those are pretty good songs, but Saturday Night Wrist, it's a good album, but I think a lot of people can agree that it's just not one of their strongest. So, yeah, but still a pretty good album for what it is. Okay, so next in the ranking, oh boy, this is where I get the tomatoes thrown at me. But next, we got Gore. I know there's a lot of people that would place this album at the bottom of the ranking, but I think this album is actually overhated. I personally don't understand the hate for this album, or, you know, why some people say that this is, like, the only bad Deftones album. Now, there's some people that say that this album is just downright terrible, or there are some people that do think the album is good, but they still have it as the weakest Deftones album, but not to me, actually. This album has a lot of great songs that I return to often. There is some really good songs on here. Prayers Triangles, Doomed User, Hearts Wires, which is a more dark and ambient song. I really like that one. Then you got Phantom Bride, which is maybe one of my favorite Deftones songs. Maybe, I don't know. It's definitely one of my favorites from their modern era, at least. I don't know what it is about that song that I just absolutely love. I think it might be the melodies, Chino's vocals. It might be a combination of a bunch of different things, but I don't know. I've always really liked Phantom Bride. Easily one of my favorites on the album. Then you got Rubicon, another really good song, but yeah. Gore, definitely not as bad as some people make it out to be. If you didn't like this album during your first listen, please give it another chance. Even if you didn't like this album at your third listen, keep giving this album chances, please. It's a really good album, so Gore. Now, next in the ranking, I gotta go with Diamond Eyes. Now, again, might get some looks for putting this album closer to the middle of the ranking, because I know that there's some people that have this in the top 3. I can understand why. I mean, it's, you know, I guess it's kind of an immediate album, I guess. Like, it's one of those ones where you pretty much enjoy it at first listen. It is a really solid album, though. I mean, you got great songs like the title track, Diamond Eyes. Now, the title track, I just really like the melodies in that song. I think it's a really great song and easily one of the best songs on the album, if not the best. I don't know what it is about this song that actually reminds me of the band Red. I don't know if anyone else hears that. I don't know if it's just the melodies or the way the song is structured or the way it flows or whatever, but the title track has always gave me some Red vibes. I mean, that's not a bad thing, of course, because I'm a longtime Red fan. It's a really good song, though. And then you got Command Control, Rocket Skates, and Risk. These are some really solid tracks. But yeah, Diamond Eyes, it's got really good production and everything, and it's a really good album. So that's what's coming next in the ranking. Next, we got to talk about Deftones' debut album, Adrenaline. I know there's some people that actually have this last in the ranking, but I mean, I can understand why, but I mean, the band was still very new at this point. You know, they were, you know, I guess trying to figure out what they wanted to be to an extent, but this is still a very solid album, and I do like it. Very good debut album as well. Many great songs on here, like Bored, Minus Blindfold, Root, and 7 Words. A lot of really great songs on here. I mean, this is a very raw sounding album. Maybe Deftones' most raw sounding album, but yeah, definitely a really great album. So Adrenaline. Next in the ranking, now there was actually a time where I had this album as my second favorite, but there's two that I've grown to like more than this album. But this is still a very good album, still a fantastic album. So next in the ranking, Koyunacon. Now, when it comes to the Deftones albums that I think are underrated, this is one of those ones that definitely come to mind. Probably this album and Gore, I think, are maybe their most underrated, but I'm not sure. Maybe Adrenaline too. I don't know. It's kind of a tough call, though. Now, these albums, like Koyunacon, obviously not as talked about or recognized enough as much as their bigger albums like Diamond Eyes, White Pony, or even Around the Fur, but I think this is still a very solid album. I mean, I pretty much got no complaints with it, though, even though it's only number 4 in my ranking. I mean, it's this band's discography is just absolutely solid. I mean, you got great songs on here: Swerve City, Romantic Dreams, Leathers, Entombed, and Tempest. There's a lot of really great songs on here. Not really a weak moment on this album, so definitely a great album. Definitely. So Koyunacon. Next, we're in the top 3. Now, some people might disagree with this album being number 3 since, well, this is, of course, their newest album. But this is one of those albums that I feel like throughout my years of being a Deftones fan, I'm going to look back on the time when this album came out, because I did become a fan like a few months before this album came out. And I am, of course, talking about Ohms, their latest album, and wow, this album is fantastic. Easily one of the best albums of 2020. I mean, you'd have to be insane to not put this in at least the top 10 best albums of 2020 list. I mean, this album is fantastic. It has maybe some of my favorite Deftones songs, especially Error. Error is just a song that I absolutely love. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, definitely one of my favorite Deftones songs. I mean, I just really like the structure and flow of that song. It's fantastic. You also got songs like Genesis, Ceremony, and the title track. Radiant City is also good. I mean, Ohms has a lot of fantastic songs. So that's what's coming next in the ranking at number 3. Fantastic album. Now, next at number 2. Now, these top 2 are pretty much a no-brainer. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with these top 2. But next, at number 2, I'm going to go with White Pony. I know there's a lot of people that say that this is number 1, but I actually really like this album. It's not number 1 for me, but it's my second favorite, of course. I mean, the production is excellent, and it's obviously a classic. There's so many great songs on here. Digital Bath, Street Carp, Knife Party, Passenger, Change in the House of Flies. A lot of really great songs on this album. But yeah, White Pony, definitely one of their best. Really solid album. Okay, so at number 1, I know this is number 1 for some people, a lot of people actually, but at number 1, I gotta go with Around the Fur. Yeah, definitely a great album. Whenever I was getting into Deftones, this was the first one that I checked out, actually. It wasn't my first Deftones CD, but it was the first album that, I actually checked out. But, yeah, it's definitely a great album, though. Not a weak song on this album. Some favorites of mine would be My Own Summer, Libya, or however it's said, the title track, Be Quiet and Drive, and Motion, wow, Lotion, my bad, but yeah, just a lot of great songs on this album, obviously a classic, so Around the Fur, that's my number 1 for the Deftones ranking. So there you have it. That is my ranking for the Deftones albums. Let me know what you think. How would you rank the Deftones discography? Feel free to let me know in the comments. What do you think of this ranking? Feel free to let me know. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.